Good evening. I'm Sister Catherine Ryan. I'm from Maryville Academy, and this evening our guest is James Eklund, who's from the Maryville Family Behavioral Health Clinic. You are watching Maryville Cares. This is a live, interactive show on Cable Access Network television tape station 21. We are also streaming online at cantv.org/hotline. That's cantv.org/hotline. For the next 25 minutes, we're addressing ourselves to parents, grandparents, other family members who care for children, and this is a chance to learn more about, to recognize, and to obtain treatment for children who are afflicted by opiate addiction. We hear a lot about it now, and so Jim is going to help us this evening to understand more about what this is and how families can seek treatment for their child, because we know that with treatment our children can succeed and recover from this addiction. You can call the number at the bottom of the screen if you have a question. The number is 312-738-1060. I do need to remind everyone that we are not providing legal advice and we are not providing medical advice. And with that said, I'm happy to introduce Jim Eklund. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you very much, Sister.
Jim, can you start us off by explaining what are opioids?
Sure. Opioids are synthetically made substances that are derived from opium, found naturally through poppy plants in places around the world. Mostly they're used for medical issues, including anesthesia and pain management. But on occasion, people begin to use opioids in a way that's not as directed in an effort to feel high.
And what about the opioids produce this effect, this sense of high?
Opioids attach themselves to opioid receptors in the brain, which limit the amount of pain that people can feel. And this is important for medical purposes, obviously, when it comes to recovery from surgery or other chronic pain conditions that somebody might suffer through the course of normal disease or injury.
So I have my dental surgery, I've got some extensive pain, and my doctor might give me a prescription for a medication that would be referred to as an opioid?
That's correct, Sister. So your doctor, in this case, may prescribe you with a Norco or a Vicodin or a Percocet, which are all commonly prescribed pain medicines that are designed to help limit the pain, in this example of some dental surgery or some dental practice that have been done.
So this is a perfectly good use of this opioid.
That's correct.
How did we find ourselves with persons developing addictions to opioids?
Two things have happened recently. The first is that the market was flooded with prescription pain medicines, prescribed in good faith, one could presume, but overused by the recovering dental patient, for example. So for more than the prescribed amount, or to continue to complain about pain after the pain has subsided. So doctors would prescribe these opioids, and oftentimes, if not needed for legitimate pain purposes, they would find themselves sold on the street.
And how serious a problem is this, Jim?
Well, it's a very serious problem. We know from research that tolerance can begin to build for folks as early as 2 to 3 days after starting to take opioid pills.
And what does that mean, tolerance?
Tolerance is a condition in which you need to take more and more of any substance, quite honestly, to achieve the same effect. So a great example of this would be in alcohol. A high tolerance would mean that you need 2 beers to feel the effects of alcohol, but as your tolerance grows, you would need 4 or 6 or 8 beverages in order to feel the same effect.
Okay. And so when let me go back to my example, I've taken my medication while I've had the worst of the pain after the dental surgery or some other kind of surgery, and now actually I'm healing, but I miss that euphoric sense. So even though the pain's not as great, I might still be taking the medication beyond the time I need to. Is that what we're
That's-
talking about?
That's exactly correct, sister. So once the pain subsides, if you continue to take opioids, you continue to build tolerance, as we just talked about. You begin to build a euphoric feeling that happens through opioid prescription use. And we need to talk briefly about heroin, which is which is an opioid. It's not taken as prescription, and that in the way that it's taken offers a much more immediate and a higher high, so to speak, than a prescription opioid might do.
So the heroin, of course, is illegal,
It is.
and we know that there is that kind of traffic, as we say, on the streets or in the markets.
That's correct.
But this is a legal prescription being misused, and it's creating a high, maybe not as fast as the heroin,
That's right.
but equally dangerous if I become addicted.
That's true, and as an addiction develops and grows, the typical user might turn from a overused prescription opioid to heroin because it's more readily available and significantly cheaper.
Okay, so I want to, in a moment, talk about what parents should look for as
Certainly.
symptoms or signs of a possible problem. But before we do that, I know that in the State of Illinois Opiate Action Plan, which just came out, they reference that we're in the third wave already of the opioid epidemic. And they reference the opioid fentanyl and similar ones. Can you talk to us about what fentanyl is?
Yes, so fentanyl is a synthetic opioid, which means it's derived in a lab. There's nothing natural about it. And it is 40 to 100 times stronger than heroin. Ironically, however, it's cheaper to produce on the black market, which makes it extremely a very welcome partner to folks that traffic in this black market, as they're able to supplement their heroin doses with a fentanyl dose, oftentimes without the user even noticing, and that has led to a significant amount of overdoses in our area, but also nationwide.
And do you have some statistics on how serious this problem is?
I do. So, Sister, fatal opioid overdoses in Illinois have been rising for years, as we know, even before synthetics. But in Illinois, in 2013, there were 1,000 overdoses.
Wow.
Only 8% of those, might I add, are involved fentanyl as part of the overdose.
What year was that now?
That is 2013.
All right.
3 years later, only 3 years later, we've seen that number soar to 1,900 overdose deaths in our area, and about half of those are fentanyl related now. For context, in the Chicago and surrounding suburbs, there were approximately 1,500 overdose deaths in 2017.
Deaths from the overdose.
Deaths,
Wow.
that's correct. It is now the most common way to die in Illinois under the age of 50 is an overdose death, which is a staggering statement to make. More people, Sister, are killed from overdoses than in homicides, than more than double from car accidents. This is an absolute national and state crisis, health crisis for sure.
So we know that these other ways of death are also tragedies.
Absolutely.
And here we have yet another one that our parents and grandparents and family members want to protect children from. So what are some signs that a parent might see that would cause the parent to need to go further and determine if this is a problem?
Well, certainly when we counsel parents and families, we do so first by letting them know they're not crazy. Oftentimes, parents second guess themselves and wonder what happened to my child from 6 months ago or even 3 months ago. We tell them you're not crazy. Something is going on. It doesn't always mean there's a drug issue, but it does mean something is going on. And following their instincts and acting on instincts is generally the best advice. More specifically, however, to opiates, some of the things that we look for are constricted pupils for sure. When somebody has the drug in their system, their pupils are definitely constricted. You might notice nodding off and not being sharp mentally, as comparatively speaking to the person that you might have been talking with before. Very easily confused is another way to kind of spot it. I think the best way to look and to find what's happening is really the responsibilities and the emotions of the person that we're talking about. So you have to compare it, sister, to the person that you know wasn't on opioids. For example, somebody who was maybe very into recreational sports that all of a sudden is not interested. Somebody who had really good relationships, either with their friends or with girlfriends and boyfriends and stuff like that, that's suddenly no longer interested in that kind of thing. A real lack of interest of the things that used to provide them pleasure is the kind of thing that can be a really good tip-off that something isn't right in the substance use disorder field for your child.
So parents and grandparents, if you see changes that alarm you, you do want to ask the next question. You do want that additional information. Without jumping to the conclusion, you certainly do want to find out if at all possible this is due to some kind of misuse of opioids for our children. So what do the families do when they see these signs and they have a concern that this may be happening with their child?
The number one thing to do is to try to seek professional help. Professional help can offer a ton of choices, and it has a bunch of different forms. I think most people understand rehab, and I think it's important for parents to know that rehab is not the only option. There are a lot of...
Rehab is rehabilitation?
You leave your life and go live somewhere else and
Okay.
address your substance-related problems. And
Almost
I think
an inpatient kind of a situation.
an inpatient.
Okay.
And I think that keeps people away from seeking help, as they think they would have to make that type of commitment. But often places offer outpatient and intensive outpatients services to try and help keep families living together, going to school, doing the kinds of things that they would otherwise do while addressing a substance use disorder.
So what if parents don't know where to go for this help? We'd like to show a slide that will offer, and if you'd talk about, what is this addiction hotline?
Well, the addiction hotline is something that was set up by the state of Illinois as part of their opioid action plan, and it's designed to help parents and people that might need treatment directly to access treatment in their zip code. And so if someone were to go to call 833 to find help, they would be met with somebody that's been trained in screening that can recommend a place that might be able to help further doing a diagnostic assessment and otherwise.
Is that a 24-hour number?
It is a 24-hour number, so you can call any time of the day. And also there are several different programs throughout the county. I would encourage people and parents to certainly look within their local counties as well for several programs that may be of service to them as well.
Now, I'm going to come back in just a moment and ask what parents do if they don't have insurance.
Okay.
But first, I want to remind all of our viewers that you are watching Maryville Cares live on Cable Access Network Television 21 and on cantv.org/hotline. This evening's discussion is concerning awareness of and recognition of and treatment of children afflicted by opiate addictions. Now, Jim, we have parents, let's assume, who have seen some signs, they want to get some help, they are going to that hotline, they follow up with a provider recommended by the hotline, and the parents don't have insurance.
Well, we know from any parent can say when they call any kind of provider, one of the very first questions is what type of insurance do you have?
Right.
So we know that can be a problem. Many providers offer services to help people go into the public marketplace looking for insurance, but people could do that privately, sister, by going to www.illinois.gov and applying for medical benefits there. There are several clinics, outpatient, intensive outpatient, and otherwise, that have services for folks that have public insurance options.
All right, so before the end of the program, we'll go back to that slide and once again give the hotline and also give the address on the online that helps parents find insurance options for their child if they don't have it, if you don't have it, parents. Okay, so now the family has found some provider that the family can go to try to determine what the situation is, what's going to happen? What do you do?
The first step is always a diagnostic assessment. So a good substance use disorder provider will want to kind of get a biopsychosocial look at the problem.
Wow, that's a lot of words.
Right.
Help us, what is that?
Biology, psychology, sociology look at the problem. And what that
Okay.
means basically is we want to look at the family and find out are there issues from the family, either genetically or otherwise, that might predispose somebody to an addiction problem. The social part of the biopsychosocial assessment looks at the potential patient's social network, his friends, his interests, his hobbies, those kinds of things. And what we'd be looking for there are groups of folks that may be not the best influence for the particular patient, because a lot of times what we've seen, and especially in outpatient care, sister, is that oftentimes recovery for folks means they have to do something about their network of friends who they've built up over the years that aren't exactly supportive of their own recovery. So once an assessment is done, then a treatment plan would be developed. And a treatment plan should be all-encompassing and be a strengths-based document that a treatment care provider will be able to take a look at, help with the client, help set what goals are. The best goals are abstinence-related, of course, and having people work towards a life that is completely and totally free of addiction is generally the goal of a treatment provider.
And what do you mean by strengths-based?
A good program with a good counselor will look to find the things that people like. For example, having a patient read a bunch about recovery and do a lot of homework, for lack of a better term, would not be best for somebody that struggles with that skill, reading being a skill. However, folks that are able to do that would be appropriate. So it's very important for us as providers to get to know our patients and decide who would benefit best from what type of service. And there is not a one-size-fits-all approach to this treatment or really any other treatment.
And so parents have come, and we want to ask about what happens next to the treatment, but we find we have a caller. So welcome, caller. Your question, please.
Yes, and good evening.
Good evening.
You know, I've been listening to y'all guys, and thanks for taking the call. But you know, we've been fighting this problem for ages. Let's go into the early '60s, the beginning of '60s. You know, we had Reagan, just say no, and things of that nature. But we know now these days, drugs don't walk to it. You walk to it. So again, it's a very hard situation. Kids meet their peers, they get interest, they get curious, and they do things. That's just part of life. But the sad thing about it, our United States government and each state is dropping the ball. They take monies away where kids are not able to get in. Some with private insurance, they could get in, but the insurance companies are steady dropping it. Public aid is not allowing, every facilities allow so many beds, and the beds are shrinking. And so when those beds are filled, other people can't get in. Our governors, our senators, our congressmen, and the man that heads the whole thing, Donald Duck, is talking great things, but they not doing anything. They got to have money for facilities, for people to come in. And a lot of times, people coming in with dual diagnosis. They not just taking the drugs, but some of them are mentally challenged, and they don't even have the medication to get it. So again, it seems like sometimes we fight a losing situations, but again, you know, I believe there's a higher, greater power that tries to help us. But again, you got to try to help yourself. But we need to fight the government to ease up on that monies for kids. And see, now it's even younger than it was, say, back in the 60s. Back in the 60s, they maybe smoked a little weed, and that's it. But then they had the teas and blues. They're chopping up everything that they possibly can, put it in the drug, and you get addicted. Listen, I could go on and on. I don't want to hog the show, but if you think about it, that's where it lies at. We gotta get maybe public people to donate money. We need to do everything that we possibly can, because if you don't, you just fighting a losing battle. So again, listen, I want to thank you so much for taking the call. I hope everything goes right. I used to be part of St. Charles back in the old days, but that's another question. But again, good luck to you. And like I said, that dual diagnosis, people truly don't understand that. So again, I hope that it becomes something. Let me get out there so I can hear your response, and thanks for taking the call.
I want to thank our caller. You've raised a number of issues, not all of which, of course, we can address tonight, but you mentioned a couple times of another important piece, several important pieces, but one important piece we can pick up right now, and that's the idea of dual diagnosis. So, Jim, first of all, what does that mean in the world of treatment that you're involved in, and how does that affect the kind of treatment you provide?
Well, Sister, the caller brings up an excellent point about dual diagnosis related issues, and oftentimes what we find is for people who are suffering with substance abuse disorder issues, they also have underlying mental health issues as well, and a lot of times what they're doing is self-medicating.
Right.
So part of the mouthful I said earlier about the biopsychosocial assessment looks directly at the caller's point. Looking at a psychological history, PTSD, anxiety, bipolar, depression, and all these different mental health diagnoses really gives a good substance abuse counselor an idea as to how this problem began. And when you can find out how the problem began, you're in pretty good shape in terms of trying to piece back together and help somebody piece back together their new life in recovery.
Now, just as one example, if I can, for parents and grandparents and those of you who are caring for children, Jim is a CADC, which means?
I'm a certified drug and alcohol counselor, certified within the state of Illinois. I did, to the caller's point earlier, I did run a MISA program, which is also a dual diagnosis, mental illness and substance abuse disorder program for many years. And so I have a well-rounded experience in both fields, although I am certified as a substance abuse counselor.
And so, Jim, if a young person comes to you, an adolescent, young adult, and it is determined that this individual has a dual diagnosis, you're providing the substance abuse treatment.
That's true.
And then would you partner with someone who also provides the mental health treatment?
That's true. In the clinic I happen to be at, we have a great partnership between me and the director of our psychological service, Dr. Edgar Ramos, who provides the mental health counseling for somebody if they come in and have a dual diagnosis related issue. It's been an exceptionally successful model. People feel really supported, both in their challenges within mental health as well as their recovery, which has, as you know, its own challenges. So attacking this problem with both sides of the sword has proven to be a very useful model.
And we know that sometimes persons with an addiction are sent to one person to deal with the substance abuse treatment, and then if it's dual diagnosis, they're sent to a totally different person at another place for the mental health treatment.
That's true.
I think what you would recommend, what many people recommend, is that better to try to coordinate that treatment so that there's no conflicting information or gaps in the treatment, right?
That's absolutely, Sister.
Okay. Jim, very quickly, can you tell us how long should families expect this treatment's going to take?
It's a very difficult question to answer. It's a unique journey, and it kind of depends where you start. But you can start to notice positive changes right away with somebody that's having a substance use disorder problem. Once that they're really committed to the recovery process, which motivating for that change can be difficult.
Well, I want to thank you, Jim,
Thank
for
you.
sharing with us tonight. Thank you all for watching for this evening's show. I'm Sister Catherine Ryan from Maryville Academy. We've had the pleasure of having James Eaglin, I'm calling him Jim, from our Maryville Family Behavioral Health Clinic. And Jim has been helping us understand more about opiate addiction and how parents can recognize the signs of this with their children and how parents, you can get treatment for your child. Thank you.